Hi, this is Vugar, your go-to sales guy, and in these episodes I cover practical advice on how to close large enterprise deals from the moment you reach out to somebody to the moment you actually close the deal. So without further ado, let's get into the next episode and let's go. So this time I actually reached out to a managing director from an investment firm and I asked him to join a call on LinkedIn. It's a short message that looks like this with a low pressure CTA, and he agrees to join a call. I send an invite, he also invites his marketing director on the call, and just before the call I send out an agenda which looks like this. It's a relatively longer message which covers what is going to happen on the call, but also some of the value propositions that we get to the market. And by this, I simply remind him that he has a call in the agenda and also just give him some food for thought. So in case he asks any questions or comes with any concerns, I can discuss it pre-call and eventually clear out any questions that could potentially come in. So I send out this agenda and we join an actual call. As I go through the call with MD and the marketing director, I actually find out that they use a big competitor of ours. So in comparison to the first video I've shot where I've talked about the customer that actually haven't used any automation before, these people already had a solution in place, but it was still somewhat semi-automated. Now, the call did go great because, as I said, I was able to understand the challenges, but also, very importantly, I was able to understand the level of automations that the competitor have already brought in, so I can assess and mismatch and also showcase the benefits of our solution in comparison to these products that they have. And I was also able to discuss a little bit about the priority levels that leadership has on the table. So one thing that made this call really productive is the fact that I knew what is those 2 to 3 top players on our industry is offering, and I was able to benchmark our solution against this particular competitor. So the second I knew who is the actual tool that the company is using on the initial demo call, I was able to showcase our strong sides, and it was clear for this particular budget sponsor that the solutions that we are offering actually bring strong benefits. So when you are having a competitor in mind, or when you are having a discussion around competitor, always make sure you know what they are offering so you can benchmark your features against the data set that they are offering. So we do have a call to action, which is involving IT people, and the MD was ready to sponsor it. But one big mistake that I do is I don't schedule an immediate next step. What you will find out is some of those people are very senior and they don't really have an attention span. And even if they look excited on the call, they might not just commit on the next steps and do actions simply because you were not allocated a project manager. So I didn't book a second call, and I ended up having very excited team who were ready to move forward, but we didn't have a second step scheduled in the calendar. And another issue is I did not ask for a secretary. So now I was stuck with people, as I said, being very excited, but although they agreed to put me in touch with IT and having an internal sync about our product before moving forward, I didn't have a step in their calendars, which made it super difficult. So what I did is I kept emailing and calling a marketing director because I knew the MD just wouldn't respond to me. So one of the emails I sent to her looks like this. I say, look, hi, this is Vugar from DeckRobot. You know, as you probably seen, I tried to ping this particular MD multiple times, but perhaps he's too busy to reply or just didn't want to appear in the inbox. So, you know, I agreed that we wanted to follow up in a week time, and it sounded like you guys wanted to discuss this internally. Can you please give me an update? Can we regroup? Can we recollect? And she does not reply to me or is not picking any calls, and I kept trying for multiple times over the period of 7 days. Here it's really important not to give up, and I'm not talking about just constant pings with no value, but bringing some context and telling the person, hey, I'm here, I want to prioritize it. And then eventually the person comes back with saying, look, I'm having a hard time getting a hold of this particular MD as well, and I still need more information from him on this. I'll get back to you as soon as I get a game plan. So we didn't hear back from MD. The marketing director didn't really seem to follow up enough. And as I said, I had a very good productive initial call. I did a good discovery. I benchmarked myself against a competitor and won against in terms of the features that we offer. I was essentially moving towards an IT discussion, closing some next steps, but I didn't have action items in the calendar. And I would repeat it multiple times, guys. With senior people, when you don't have a project manager in place, make sure you have some action items in the calendar invite to make sure it's actually on the agenda, or simply ask for a project manager to be in place. So this time I actually decided to also message MD because I just haven't seen things being moving. So I just escalated back to the budget sponsor I had on the initial call, and he came back and said, look, I haven't taken a step yet to speak with IT, but it's not forgotten. Now, again, you feel like at least there is some discussion. You at least reminded him that it's still on the table and you haven't lost a deal. So whenever you have doubts and you're just not progressing with junior people, don't be afraid to escalate. So MD says it's still on the table, but I just didn't manage to go through the loops. So I went back to the marketing director and emailed saying, look, completely understandable. Thank you for the update. I wasn't sure where we stand, but at least you guys are considering an internal game plan. So how can I be helpful, right? In such position, always ask yourself a question. I followed up, nothing is moving. Can I bring some value? So what I decided to bring in is some FAQ about our solution. We sell a PowerPoint software automation solution, and also some documents for the IT in the hopes that this email could be forwarded to IT and it could spark some discussion internally. It could serve as a ground to follow up. But as I said, this email might not be the best one because, again, it was my early days. There is no clear CTA, as you can see on this email. It's not really asking for a call. It's more of a help, perhaps type of we can speak. But, in such situation, I think you can be a little bit more direct. But as I said, it was my early days in sales. I did not give up on the marketing director. I've sent a couple follow-ups, it didn't work, so I sent a third one. And again, I'm not just trying to simply ping and trying to get an update and cause frustration, but I'm again standing from a position of how can I be helpful? How can I progress with my participation where there is no action on their side, right? They're not acting, can I act, which will be productive? And I say, look, hi, how are you doing? As a salesperson, I get worried about the fact that, you lose the sales momentum. Don't be afraid, being honest with your leads. And I say exactly like that. Look, I figure out that I'm not a priority for you guys right now. I'm worried about losing a sales momentum. And, I know you try to get a hold of the person, but it seems like they're not getting back. And again, to remind you, we aligned on the fact that here is the sum of, benefits and value adds that we can bring with our AI technology. And I bring out some statements about the solution and also some of the particular clients that we have that is currently utilizing our platform in order to, brand or design, up to 50 slides in one click. And eventually I attach a white paper PDF and just trying to bring some help. Again, as I said, guys, it was very much my early days, and all I'm trying to simply do is to get something moving from a person that is not finding it being a priority, which means I most likely by now that I look back at what I've done, just haven't worked with the right person. I didn't have a right project manager. I didn't have somebody who would prioritize it. And I just didn't have a person at the right level who could serve as a person to do the groundwork. The marketing director seemed to be too senior. The MD seemed to be too senior. And I ended up with two people who just didn't prioritize it. And my follow-up just didn't help because it wasn't forwardable. It wasn't the emails that actually added some context for people to make actions. I just tried to be helpful and pushed a lot of content, which in my earlier case on my last videos that I've done was helpful, but in this time it just didn't make sense. So instead of focusing again on a marketing director, I could have at least focused on the managing director who has way more leverage and influence in this particular situation. And by the time I'm 2 months into the cycle, I realized maybe I should focus on MD and although he's senior, trying to push some action on his side. So what I do is I send an email that looks like this. I say, hi name, thanks for sharing the paper on this particular person and some remote work. He shared some article on his LinkedIn and I said, I personally really missed out on some human connection and working collaboratively, so I tried to resonate with an article that he mentioned. And I also mentioned that I know that he's very busy and he's working in private equity, but I hope that we can connect at some point. And I just want to give him some updates on what has happened since we last spoke in order to obviously create some fear of missing out. It's great to share some updates which are insightful and a person can act on. So I share a couple to 3 different updates on what has happened with Robots since we actually last spoke, and I tried to just get him on a call, and boom, he finally comes back with saying, look, I need to speak with the marketing director and the IT person before I get back to you. So marketing director is not making any steps. MD is also not taking any steps. And I'm now 2 months into the cycle. And trust me, if you speak with any enterprise sellers, they all had typical experiences of just people not getting back to them. And at this point, I decide that I need to multi-thread. I need to invite and find other champions within the deal. Remember, it's very important to keep track of your champions and figure out if they're really acting. And if they're not, it's fine to bring the new people, but you have to do it carefully. And when multi-threading, you have to ensure there is at least 3 action points that you take in mind. The first one is conducting a comprehensive assessment to ensure that this particular person or a team will be aligned with interests of a separate team. You also need to verify if the individual is also encountering identical issues or similar issues to the team that you're trying to solve a problem for, so that their interest and also their pain align and you can join them together in one conversation. And you also want to make sure that they are willing to mention their name in your separate discussion to connect those parties together. So as I said, 3 things. Make sure that interests align, make sure that the person has similar problems, and also make sure that the person is willing to connect with other parties within the same company. So I speak with another MD and I get a hold of another person within the same company. And after the call, which I felt went great, he comes back with his email and saying, "Hey Vugar, I'm meant to get back to you. Feel free to use my name as somebody who would be interested in a license. To be fair, I don't know if your solution is the best solution, but it would be a significant improvement over our current PowerPoint add-ons that we currently have, which I think just lack the, relatively any functionality." Now, this reply is a clear showcase of a person who might not be the strongest champion. It looks good on paper for some early stage, people who just joined sales, but for real experienced sellers, you can see from this email, this guy is not it. And maybe there were some mistakes that I've done on my side, which is, for example, I did not connect them over email. I did not create a ground on myself. I just asked the person if he wishes to be the champion for it, and I got a pushback. Maybe I should have called him in terms of, getting this on paper. Remember, if you want an action from a person, and if it makes sense to call, always call instead of text, because texting somebody and asking them for something, most likely just gonna get you a pushback. So now we sit at the point where marketing director doesn't want to talk to me. The MD is too busy. I tried to bring other MDs on table from a separate team who said, yeah, maybe you can mention my name. And eventually, at this point, I'm sorry to say, guys, but I gave up. So I decided to take a pause. I take a pause for months and I did not approach anybody. And then I just sent a message to the person a month later, and he comes back saying the same old thing that he said maybe 3 or 4 times by now, saying, "Look, yes, it's still on the table, but I'm just busy as hell and I just didn't have enough headspace to push this further. It's not a good situation." And you can see some of his grammar mistake on the message, which is a small detail, but it just showcases that the person just doesn't have attention span capacity or purely time to do it. So now we come up to a point that is a turnover in this whole deal cycle, which will be a funny one. So as I said, I was still fairly junior and I was trying multiple different things. And the only thing that came to my mind by the time I'm 3 months in the cycle is, guess what? Sending a blind invite. I've sent a blind invite. Yes, I did it. I did not ask him for a time. I did not ask him what time and date works. I didn't sell or tell him that I'm going to send him an invite. I just sent a calendar meeting for 2 weeks in advance and he accepted the meeting. Now, you could have asked me why you haven't done it 3 months, before or 2 months before. Just push for a meeting. But as I said, guys, I was fairly junior, and those people who are early days in sales, they would understand the hesitation to push and be frustrating. And at this point, I think it was a good strategy because the person well understood I've tried my best to shoot my shot. I didn't succeed, and now I just purely asked for time. So I sent a blind invite, and I just want to point out maybe 2 to 3 main things on what to do and when to send a blind invite. First is if a person is quite senior and they're currently not finding any time and headspace to address the matter. Second, The person is clearly not ignoring you, but rather just putting you on the side somewhere on the shelf. He's somewhere there, but he's just not getting back. And the third one, which is also super important, is that it appears that the person is still quite open to get a deal moving, but just not finding it enough of a priority. Now, all those 3 points that I've stated out, right? Senior people, not enough headspace, not ignoring but interested, and also open to discuss further, is a combination for this cherry on top of just sending a Teams invite for 2 weeks in advance and not asking and hoping for accept. Now, this guy accepts the meeting and we get on the call. So we meet with MD around December, which all my sales folks know is the worst time ever to make any action items. But, well, it is what it is. We meet around December. And at this point, I obviously learned my lesson. And I was extremely prepared and efficient for this meeting. And I agreed 3 main things. First one, I've re-forwarded him a proposal for the project. And I reconfirmed with him that he is fine with figures and the pricing. I asked him to share an IT contact and connect me with an IT team. And I asked him on the third thing, which is connecting me, most crucial thing I could have asked on this deal, is connecting me with a project manager who is actually going to handle this whole deal. If we reroute back to the whole conversations that we just had, guys, the 3 main mistakes I've done is I did not put a single good action item in terms of a calendar invite. I did not ask for a project manager for an implementation from a senior person, and I did not figure out if it's a priority at the nearest timeline. So I was very clear with my next steps, and most importantly, I already said that everything was important, but this was probably the most important part, is I've put a calendar invite and I agreed that we will speak in 30 days from now. You might be asking yourself, 30 days? That's a month from now. Why are you pushing it so further? Again, guys, I was a junior sales guy. I was hesitant. I've prepared my best. And then I was just a little bit shy to ask for any immediate steps. And also bear in mind, it's a December period. People gonna go to Christmas, blah, blah, blah. But generally, a recommendation from a seller, don't have action items placed for more than 3 weeks in advance. 1 week, 2 week is great, but here, as I said, some exception matters, like a December Christmas period, or maybe you just, being a little bit shy and a junior person. So we agree on the next steps, and now I need to wait, unfortunately, for the budget approval and for the person to go into the leadership meetings. The couple days before the actual meeting, the champion sends an email himself and says, look, dude, I have some internal meetings in New York this next couple weeks. Actually just next week. And part of the agenda is to review the budgets. I need to put this meeting a week after just so I can get an approval for this particular use case. Now we push out a meeting for a week, and one thing I decide to do, and again, I know I keep repeating myself, but I was a fairly junior person, and if I were there now, I would have done a completely different thing. But then I decided to build a business case. I found some numbers on their website in terms of how many consultants they hired, I think on LinkedIn actually, in the last 6 to 12 months. And I tried to estimate a potential amount of time that we can save based on this data I've gathered to give this as a preparation guide for my champion. And you might be saying, Rugar, you maybe did a really good thing. You found some public news, you used it for your own advantage to build a context for your leadership, and you've sent it out to use as a context for the business meeting. Now, unfortunately, you will commonly find those business cases would be purely skipped due to 2 main reasons. A, the small amount of money you're trying to approve, and B, it wasn't aligned with the champion on what exactly his criteria are for ROI. So for future reference, I would have built a business case together with my champion or my project manager and try to figure out what is actually criteria that is important for them, and maybe even build a business case in their own company template. And a couple of people like Nate Nostrala and others are talking about the importance of in creating a common and mutual business case and alignment on that criteria. But for now, I've just built this, business case. Hey, you hired this many consultants. Here's how many time, here's how much time you saved, and here's, how much investment you will do, and it would make sense because of A, B, C, D. Seems like a very simple business case, but I just use it as a follow-up. So I build a business case, I send it out in this email that looks like this. I say, hey, here's what I tried to do in the meantime. I've tried to figure out how much time you can actually save based on the consultants you hired, blah, blah, blah. Try to push just as a reminder, perhaps he would use it for his meeting. I don't think he actually did use it, but he did come back to me saying that we are going in the right direction. And guess what? He got the verbal approval for the money for the pilot, and we are moving forward, guys, which means he got the initial agreement to get the dollars into our pockets. So he got the verbal approval, which means we are very close. And I say, look, sounds good. Let's have a chat tomorrow and I'll see how can I help. Glad to hear that we are moving towards the right direction. To be honest, this email seems like very cold and short, but I was way more excited inside. I just didn't want to showcase it. I don't know why. I was just a bit junior, guys. Now we meet with my champion again and I find out he got a budget approved for the initial project. And he's now trying to set up a pilot group together, but he tells me that there are a couple gatekeepers, and although he approved the pilot money and it's his budget to move forward and he will be the senior sponsor, there are a couple of relationship, account management and marketing teams he just wants me to showcase a solution to. And what you will often find, guys, is that there is a team of people who are not necessarily going to be influenced by your solution at all times, but they would be a gatekeeper towards some of the key elements within the introduction of your software to a particular team. It's completely normal to have a business sponsor, but having a couple of other people still being sold into, you wouldn't expect them to be super objective against your solution, but you still need to prepare and meet those stakeholders and make sure that they're happy with what you're trying to bring in order for business sponsor to just reconfirm we can move forward. So the business sponsor introduced me to the project manager and he says, here's the guy, he is going to help me to set up a group of key stakeholders for this company, and the group represents folks from marketing, relationship management, and also some line of delivery, and he will leave it up to us to decide on logistics, and he's happy to be a senior sponsor. So as I said, guys, he says, look, dude, I'm happy to be the guy to pay for this. Just go set up some admin stuff. So I get introduced to the project manager, finally, now that the budget got approved. And he just tells me that he needs a little bit more time to line up stakeholders. And I think he was just super busy and he just couldn't find time to organize a session. But also to defend him, it's super hard to get 10 people on a call together, even if they're all gatekeepers, right? And why I say even is because, it's not necessarily that all of those people needs to be on the call, but he just needs to find time to put all of them in one group. And it's extremely hard for a large enterprise firm to do it. Now, what I do, and probably one of the biggest and most instrumental parts of this particular deal, and I don't want to sound like a super smart sales guy, but I've just asked for one-on-one in the meantime with my PM, right? He struggled to book a meeting, he took his time, we start losing a little bit of sales momentum, and he's trying to schedule this large call of just gatekeepers all together. And I'll have a separate, section in one of my next videos where I'll cover how to overcome a lot of different objections, because I know you guys go through quite a bunch of them. But I decided to get on a call on one-on-one with my PM and I asked him for support and help. And here again, it's crucial to make sure you build the champions within every single person that you meet and a persona that is within the deal. Try to get them on your side. So he did struggle to schedule me a call with a larger group, but in the meantime, I get on a call with him and we build a slide deck structure for those gatekeepers in order to essentially present my solution, and I ask for a lot of advice from his side. So he's felt like he's heard, he's feel like he's involved, and I don't make it frustrating for him to understand that maybe he's just taking too much time to book this wider call. Now, the structure we agreed for a slide deck is 5 simple things: executive summary, a business case / a business outcome, and essentially why this particular business would benefit from our solution. Obviously, a use case and number of brands that currently use our product and a social proof. A demo, a live product demonstration, and an implementation how to actually start the project with us. And what you will find out in most of your C-level and even gatekeeper calls, this structure of summary, business case, business outcomes, demo, implementation would be a very good way to set up you within a particular call where you might expect quite a lot of objections. So as I book a larger call, I go through LinkedIn profiles of people who were invited on that call, and I just find out that some of them are super senior and I might lack leverage and I might not be able to handle all of the objections and just not sell them simply. In such situation, whenever you feel like, just trust your gut, trust your sales intuition. Even if your qualification looks good on paper, always double check yourself. Do I really have enough leverage? And at this point, when I looked through that larger call of gatekeepers, I just felt like I don't have sufficient leverage. So, and don't ask me how. Actually, do ask me how. You can comment, I want to see emails, and I'll send it to your email, immediately. But I send an outreach email to a group of C-level people within this account separately. And I wanted to ask them to be part of the pilot group. Because guess what? My budget is approved. I lack leverage. I can just invite some C-level people and their teams to be part of the pilot because it's already being sponsored. We can add a couple licenses here and there. So I reach out to some C-level people, separately, and I ask them to get on a call with me. And I managed to somehow get those 2 calls scheduled with some of the C-level people before my wider audience call. They get on a call, the C-level people, and they love the solution. And they say, look, this looks super cool. I want to be part of the pilot group. Can you sign me up whenever that pilot starts? And this is probably not just a pivotal moment, but a moment where I've realized, oh, crap, when I have the money on the table approved, I can constantly increase my leverage by inviting people to be part of the project because there is no longer authority required to sponsor. You obviously don't want to prolong, 20 licenses left and right, but you can fit in a couple people here and there because you already have a sponsor approved, right? You know what I mean? So we get those people in and they love the solution, and I ask them to be a group of the pilot group. And lastly, I want to say on this particular point, even if they like the solution, I still wanted to make sure that there is 3 things that I've done. I isolated discussions until a consensus that the solution is valuable is in place before I connect them to other people. I ensure that each stakeholder belongs to the same service line or at least the same team or a type of a team, so that I'm not dragging people from some random departments which might not be just simply a part of the budget. And the third thing, I made sure that I increase my leverage and I bring things together smoothly. So as I get those additional people being very interested in an initial pilot, I now have way more leverage coming to that gatekeeper call. And guess what? That gatekeeper call goes absolutely great. Everybody was sold. Everybody found out that the solution might be super interesting. And maybe it was because the solution was great, but it also could be because I've done so much groundwork. I've already approved my budget. I've already connected with PM and built a slide deck based on what his points were. I found additional people within their team on a super senior level who would be interested to be part of the pilot. And now I come to gatekeepers with my hands open. And the reason I'm saying it, guys, is because it's super important to understand the fact that your job as a salesperson is to increase your leverage as much as you can. And when you do join objective calls or gatekeeper calls, you're super strong, right? And whenever you lose those deals, it might not be because of a solution or because those people didn't have a good mood. It might be because you didn't do enough as a salesperson. So don't take the contextual circumstances as the ground of your work, but do take your action as the ground of the perfection that you can achieve when coming to such large enterprise discussions overall. My experience with legal was very smooth as well, only a couple minor things, and now the document was pretty much ready to be signed. Surprisingly, I didn't have too many red lines from the legal team or too many questions from IT this time. And as I said, I was super happy with the onboarding process overall. I wish I can tell the company name. And the document was actually signed by a person I didn't even know. I have never met. And sometimes for some deals, you would find a situation where a procurement person or a head of business line is signing a document, and don't be worried if you don't know the person. Sometimes for a certain amount of deal sizes, this deal was relatively, smaller size, you don't even need to know the person. Everything was approved. You just need to report back to that person saying that here's who approved you and here's the email I've actually sent. I said, look, that's me. Here's the product. Here's who it was approved by for IT. Here's who it was approved by legal. We are ready to sign. My champion sends this email to the approval contact, and then they sign it off because everything was already done, you know. And as I said, you don't need to be scared if you don't know the signed contract sometimes for smaller deals relatively, as long as your champion knows the process and asks you to report back. So as you can see, I reported back, they signed off, and the deal was done. Thank you so much for watching the second episode. I really hope you find these episodes valuable. And as I said in my first video, I do it because I did not find help myself. When I've looked through a lot of different content on YouTube, I just didn't find sufficient amount of practicality and on-hands experience when it comes to closing large enterprise deals. I know I'm not getting super fully on hands, and I also talk a lot, but if you do feel like there is a certain part of my content which you want me to put more attention on, or where I need to showcase more, you know, show more emails, show more calls, maybe show a recording of a call and go through it, just let me know your ideas in the comments, and please subscribe. All the information you're going to share with me is going to be really valuable for me to tailor it, because guess what? I'm trying to hear back my audience. And just for the last, if you don't mind, I do have a little bit of Russian-speaking audience on my channels, perhaps. Коллеги, я хотел сказать, что я пытаюсь сделать эти видео очень практичными. Поэтому, если у вас есть какие-то конкретные кейсы или какие-то конкретные стадии в сделке, которые вы хотели бы обсудить, пожалуйста, напишите мне. Напишите в комментарии, или вот здесь будет моя почта. Напишите мне на почту, и я попробую разобрать или помочь вам. Абсолютно бесплатно. Я делаю это, потому что я хочу помочь и вернуть вам за то, что вы смотрите мой канал. Поэтому подписывайтесь. Целую. Пока-пока.